Our number one problem as sensitive people is that we tend to get depleted by our relationships, and that's why we fail in our relationships. Hi, my name is Leah Chantel, and today I'm talking about our number one issue as sensitive people in our relationships, and it is that we get depleted in our relationships. We get exhausted, we get burned out, and I'll talk about some of the reasons why and how to fix that. So the reason why we get depleted and sensitive nowadays in our relationships personally, it has to do with conflicting priorities and conflicting narratives that we get about our personal relationships. So when we go to a workplace, for example, it's pretty straightforward what we need to do at work. We need to work hard, we need to pay attention to what the boss wants, and we need to stay on task and help the boss do whatever it is they need to do. And usually we succeed in our work when we do those things. But when it comes to our relationships, it's not so straightforward. We might try to simplify things in relationships and think, if I try really hard, for example, if you're a lady like me, and it tends to be ladies who do this, if I cook everything, if I dress sexy, if I do everything intimately that they want, and I'm not saying that I do this, but I'm just saying sensitive people can be prone to this kind of thinking. If I do everything that the person says they want me to do, just like work, then that means my personal relationship is going to succeed. When that's not always true at all in personal relationships. In fact, the wrong type of person is going to push you to do things that aren't really good for you. And even good people can have kind of naughty moments where they try to push the boundaries of the other person in their personal relationships. And as a sensitive person, you gotta be aware of when you think your potential partner is pushing the boundaries and asking you to do too much. And it's a bit unreasonable. And they may unconsciously know that too. And you'll probably feel your heckles going up. You'll probably feel that what they're asking you to do is a bit yucky. And if it's a minorly yucky thing and it comes up once in a while, that I would say is okay, as long as you can say no and you feel safe continuing in the relationship, you're probably going to be okay. And we'll go into saying no in a little bit more detail in a minute. But if people are asking you to do something yucky and you feel like you're obligated to do it and you can't say no, then that's a really bad sign off the jump in a new relationship. If somebody is requiring you to drive a long distance to go see them and they don't really have a car, there's no other way to really connect unless you spend a lot of money in gas in order to go see them, that's kind of a bad sign right off the hop too. Because that means you're putting in a lot more effort than the other person. And it may not even be fair, maybe they can't afford to have a car right now, but what that means is you need to adjust your selection criteria and pick somebody who's a little closer to you. But if you both have cars, and you can both go to see each other, then it's a bit more fair. And that's why conversations about whether or not long distance works can also be complicated. It depends on the resources that the other person has. And it's never a 50-50 split when you give to another person. I mean, if you're giving, expecting to receive, then it's kind of like a trade. And then that doesn't work either. But you just want to make sure that in order to avoid burnout, exhaustion, depletion, that the person is giving a little bit back. You don't want to be the person giving all the time, because that's a good way to set yourself up for burnout and bitterness, so that when you eventually do break up, you don't have the resources to deal with a new relationship. And that can happen to us as sensitive people. We can be very, very exhausted at the end of the relationship after doing all the cooking, all the planning of the dates, all the traveling, all the expenses, and then the other person is just running away for whatever reason. And we want to avoid that by setting boundaries. That's probably one of our key skills that we need to develop as sensitive people, is to say no when people request us to do something, or to suggest something else. Maybe it's not a hard no, but maybe we find a different way. If somebody's asking us to drive a long way, maybe we try to meet somewhere in the middle. If somebody is asking us to do something we don't really feel comfortable with physically, maybe we just decide to do a different fun activity for the night. Maybe we go play a game together, like mini golf or bowling instead. You have to come up with alternatives to things, and when we come up with alternatives, that's also a way to set a boundary and say no, but without overtly saying no. and then the topic comes up again and they want to talk about it again, then you can kind of explain if you feel really connected to this person that this activity doesn't resonate for you. And it doesn't even have to be a long explanation. You can just say you don't like it, and that should be enough. You shouldn't have to over explain unless you really feel compelled to explain because you have a really good connection with this person and you feel comfortable explaining, but it's not an obligation for you to explain your no, if that makes sense. So in order to avoid burnout, you have to catch the signs early that someone's depleting you. For example, I dated a person and it turned out he was living in a tiny, tiny boat. And he wanted me to basically live in his boat. And I just realized off the hop that that's just not going to work for me. That's going to really deplete my energy. That's going to take my physical energy down. That's not going to be good for my health. So I just said no. Like, if this is the way you live, then it's a no. And we'll all have to come to decisions like that in our dating process. The early days is usually when you're getting information on whether or not the relationship is set up to succeed or not. And it doesn't necessarily mean people have to be 100% perfect, but they have to be willing to grow and change. And it has to be a fairly straightforward process for them. If they're living in an incredibly cheap but unlivable place that works for them, but it doesn't work for you, for example, and there's no hope of upgrading in order to get a more comfortable living situation that you feel happy and healthy in, then that's not going to work long term. You see, you're going to be fighting about that when you don't feel so good, and then that relationship is going to deplete your energy, and then it just sets you up for failure. So if you can avoid relationships like that from the very beginning, and you can see those signs, you know you're going to be exhausted, you're not going to feel good, then you cut off the relationship that's wrong for you very, very early, which is actually a good thing, because then you continue dating and then you find a person who's going to be a better fit for you. And there are many varieties of wrong, especially if you're someone similar to me. Like, I'm a sensitive person. I've had physical issues in my life, medical issues, which I've worked hard to conquer, and I'm extremely healthy now. But I'm also aware of the fact that if a gentleman is living a lifestyle that is physically not resonating with me, like it looks like it could harm my health in some way or affect my mental health, then I don't go for that, because I've worked incredibly hard to get where I'm at physically and mentally today. So there's no way I'm going to endanger my health in any way for any gentleman. It just doesn't really make sense, and I'm better off being single and on my own as a lady.